Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Black Mirror Season 5, Episode 1, Striking Vipers. This video is part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Black Mirror, so I'll have to start with a spoiler warning for Season 5 of Black Mirror. Mainly, since each episode's standalone, the spoiler warning is basically just for this one episode, Striking Vipers. But I am going to talk a bit about other Black Mirror series, but I won't get into any serious spoilers. So anyway, first let me start off by talking about Season 5 of Black Mirror, because I did watch the entire season, which is only 3 episodes. This is kind of going back to the format of Season 1 and Season 2 were only 3 episodes, although Season 2 is White Christmas is now considered to be part of 2, at least by Netflix, so that makes it 4 episodes, but White Christmas actually came out like a year after Season 2 did, but whatever. Basically, Season 1 and 2 had 3 episodes. Season 3 is when Netflix bought the rights to Black Mirror, and Black Mirror aired on Netflix as opposed to, I can't remember which channel in UK it aired on, but usually, first 2 seasons aired basically exclusively in the UK, but then it became more international when Netflix bought the right in Season 3. And then Season 3 and 4 had 6 episodes once it came to Netflix. But now, Season 5 is going back to the original format of only having 3 episodes. And I suspect a huge part of that is probably because of Bandersnatch, which came out just a few months ago, like 5 or 6 months ago. Which, if you don't know, Bandersnatch was the interactive Black Mirror movie. And Netflix actually doesn't consider that part of Season 5 the way it considers White Christmas part of Season 2, because it's not considered an episode of Black Mirror. It's considered a Black Mirror movie. So if you go on Netflix, you have to go into the movie section to get the Bandersnatch, and it's not listed in the Black Mirror series. But, that's all semantics anyway, it doesn't really matter. But I think what I'm saying is I do think the reason why they've gone back to 3 episodes is because of Bandersnatch, because they did a lot of time working on Bandersnatch. So if they wanted to do a 6-episode season, they'd probably have to push it back to a lot further away. And it's been almost a full year, or over a year, since Season 4 came out. So I suspect they didn't want to push it back that further. So I suspect that if there's no further Bandersnatch type projects in the future, that the next season, hopefully there will be a next season, fingers crossed, we'll have 6 episodes, but maybe not. It's just my wild speculation. Anyway, getting into Season 5, how I felt about it. I do feel that, I don't know, a lot of people have a lot of various opinions on Black Mirror. Since each episode is standalone, and a lot of episodes have a totally different style, tone, and just feeling to it. Black Mirror, more than any other show, I think the opinions vary greatly. And I've seen tons and tons of different opinions on which episodes, which seasons are good or not. And my opinion personally, I loved Season 4. Now, I heard a lot of people say that they thought Season 4 was a bit lackluster, a bit of a step down, but I completely disagree. Season 4 was by far my favorite season of the show so far. And Bandersnatch, as I mentioned, just came out half a year ago. This is my favorite. I thought that was a masterpiece. That was my as I just said, it's not technically an episode, but if you call it an episode, it would be my favorite of the entire show. I absolutely loved it, and a lot of people thought Bandersnatch was a bit lackluster. So, I don't know. The opinions just vary greatly. But for me, I would put Season 5 kind of in the low end of the Black Mirror seasons. Now, just to clarify, I don't think there's any such thing as a bad season of Black Mirror. I think every season of Black Mirror is top-notch. I think this is a really high-quality show, one of the best shows out there, which I'd said. I think I called this recently my second favorite show, airing currently, the first being The Expanse. It used to be Game of Thrones, but that went off the deep end, but I won't get into that here. That's technically finished, but even if it wasn't, that wouldn't be but anyway, off topic. Black Mirror, As I said, no bad season. All the seasons are good, but I think season 5 would be kind of down with season 3 as my least favorite season of the show. I'm not sure which one I would like better or not at the moment. But again, that's not to say I didn't like the season. I did like it a lot. It's just, to me, it didn't quite stand up to the high quality that Bandersnatch and season 4 had set. So maybe I'm just a tad bit disappointed. But again, not a bad season. So it's not like I was a huge letdown like some other shows I could talk about. But as I said, won't get into that here. Anyway, but the thing that made season 5 really different than other seasons, because most seasons of Black Mirror, particularly the earlier ones, will have a couple really amazing episodes and a couple of really bad episodes. I think the biggest example of this for me is season 1, which had started out with like the worst, most piece of crap episode of the entire show. And then the next 2 episodes were various levels of amazing and really good high quality. So it's like in a season you can have an episode that absolutely sucks and a couple other that are amazing. And then in the longer seasons like season 3 and 4, you have some episodes that are just mediocre and some episodes that are crap and some episodes that are amazing. So there's always like an ups and downs. And I think that's what set seasons 5 apart from me, because you don't really get that various. There's no crap episodes this season. They're all various degrees of good, but there are no amazing episodes either. There are no blow me away episodes like there were in previous seasons. So we don't have that disparity, that ups and downs that most seasons have. They're all at pretty much the same level of good, but it never rises to the amazing level, which is probably why I would personally say is one of the lesser seasons, personally, because I like the episodes that completely blow me away, and I don't think we really got any of that this season. But as I said, it was a very enjoyable, acceptable, and entertaining season. Still a lot better than most TV shows put out. So, let me start and get more specifically into this episode, Striking Vipers. And this is probably, and again, as I said, there's no crap episodes this season. They're all good. But this was probably my least favorite of the 3. I don't know. I did think it was really interesting. Now, I really didn't want to talk about this episode that much. I'd already decided to do a video for each episode of Black Mirror. When I saw this episode, I was like, oh no, this is going to be not fun to talk about, because it has a lot to do with sort of gender politics and politics in general, and I feel like I can't really talk about this episode without getting a little bit into that, which, I'd rather not, but just because it's the internet. But whatever, I'm going to have to in order to talk about this episode, because this episode reminded me a lot of Brokeback Mountain. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if some people started nicknaming this episode Brokeback Gaming, because it's kind of like that. Although there are some huge differences, of course. I mean, in the structure, it does seem like the way these two men meet every once in a while, and they find this addiction and their relationship with each other, it reminded me of Brokeback. And of course, one of them has a spouse, just like in Brokeback Mountain, so it reminds me of that. But there are a lot of huge differences, and like the most obvious one is the technology, because this is about, they made it clear in this episode that it's mainly about the technology involved, which is what makes it a Black Mirror episode. But I would say the bigger difference is that Brokeback Mountain portrayed a relationship of 2 closeted homosexuals who were really homosexual, but they, because of society norms and society pressures, they, had to suppress that part of themselves. So they pretended to leave this heterosexual life until discovering their true nature. So that's why they were closeted. Whereas this episode, I would describe these 2 men as heterosexuals, but that are bi-curious. And I think that is I don't know, just me personally, I know a lot of people have different opinion, but I think that is an important distinction to make between bisexual and bi-curious, because I think bisexual or homosexuals will have a relationship, a long-term relationship, and love for people of the same gender. I think with homosexuals, it typically would have to be the same gender, and they don't really have the same feelings towards people of the opposite gender. But bisexuals could have those feelings of wanting to be in a long-lasting, loving relationship with someone of either gender. And the way I make the distinction between bi-curious is people who engage in sort of same-sex or different gendered sexual activity, but not necessarily would want to be in a long, loving, lasting relationship. And so they're just curious. They want to experiment again every once in a while. And I think this episode makes it very clear that that's the case when these two men meet in person and they kiss and they both feel nothing. And I think it's actually a really interesting concept to explore, and I think it was actually, personally, I think it was much better that they did it with two men rather than two women, because and I've read studies about this, that it's more socially acceptable for two women to be, experiment than it is for two men, because it's seen as hot through, the sort of male pornography industry and stuff like that, where there's a lot more stigmatism put on men experimenting with their sexuality. So I thought that was sort of an interesting and brave choice to explore two men exploring their sexuality. But it has said that I think these are both heterosexual men, particularly the character played by Anthony Mackie, but that's just is through this technology that they're able to have this relationship. And so that's, as I said, what makes it a Black Mirror episode, because it's kind of less about their sexual identity and more about this piece of technology and how it opens things up. Because I think, as they made clear in this episode, these two men would never have a sexual relationship outside of this technology. It's only the technology that opens things up, which is why, of course, what Black Mirror is all about is exploring how technology affects, relationships and stuff like that. Now, I thought the episode itself was interesting. It was an interesting way they slowly developed this relationship, but I don't know. I don't think it really took me to a higher level. Like the plot seemed pretty simple throughout, and I think the way they explored this technology, that was a fighting game, and how these people would meet and have this secret relationship, even though the one guy was married. Is it cheating? Is it not? Kind of a question. I think this episode makes it very clear that it is saying that it is, because this guy it takes away his sexual inhibition. Like, he no longer wants to have sex with his own wife, and she can tell that something is seriously wrong, and so she suspects that he's cheating on her. And it turns out, yeah, he kind of is. So I would think it very clearly, this episode is saying that it was, because even though he didn't have romantic feelings towards the other person, is that sexual experience of meeting in this video game was sort of overriding his desires for his own wife. So I thought that was pretty interesting, but I gotta be honest, I didn't really care for the ending, and I didn't really buy the ending very much. One thing I will say is that, as I said, I think this episode makes it very clear that the relationship these two main characters have, the male characters, is not, I wouldn't call it a loving relationship. I would call it a sexual relationship. It's something that, it's like a fling, I would put it in. Usually, and it doesn't matter, what sexual orientation is, but mostly it could be heterosexual relationships like this, where two people just meet and they enjoy having sex, and because it's something new. And it seems like the technology even adds an extra layer to that doing it through this piece of technology, this video gaming thing, adds an extra layer of excitement, an extra layer of, oh, this is something new, this is something original. And so I feel, it's kind of like an addiction in a way, because that's the way the episode portrayed it. Because when Anthony Mackie's character, like, broke it off, the other guy was, like, very upset, and he couldn't eat or sleep, and his life was sort of ruined. But it was more, I think it was more of an addiction type scenario. And I do feel that if things continue the way this ending suggests, where they are able to continue this relationship, I think that they'll get tired of it. I think it's a novelty. I think that was made clear when the two men met in person. They kissed each other, and they're like, I feel nothing. So it made it clear to me that it's only this technology and the excitement of doing something original and new and weird, but once it loses that stigmatism to it, once it becomes ordinary and less original or weird, I think the relationship is going to die out. Because, as I said, if this was portrayed as a truly, like, romantic relationship between these two men, then it would be different. But I think they made it clear in this episode that wasn't the case, that they didn't really feel anything for each other beyond friendship and beyond the excitement of having these sexual encounters in the video game. So here's what I think is going to happen. Like, it seems like the ending was trying to present this scenario like, this is going to go on forever, that he's going to live in this happy relationship in his marriage, and he's going to raise his children with his wife. But every once a year, or whatever it was, once a month, I can't remember, he goes to meet his friend in the video game. They had this video game sex, and the wife goes out and has a fling with some random guy. And they live happily ever after. But here's my speculation on what's going to happen to this relationship. That the sexual encounter of the video game is going to run out and become tired from Anthony Mackie. Maybe it won't even for the other character, and they'll again have another falling out. And they won't, and so those two friends will stop talking to each other once the excitement wears down, and then he's gonna realize that his wife has been going out and sleeping with other guys, and he's gonna hold a lot of resentment for her against that, and she's gonna hold a lot of resentment for him for being a hypocrite because he was cheating on her first, and then their relationship is gonna fall apart, and there's going to end in divorce. There's going to be a fight over the children. So the friends are never going to talk to each other again, and the husband and wife are going to split, and they're going to have a bad relationship and not talk to each other unless they have to because of the custody battles. That's my scenario. And again, you might get into, this gets into the whole polyamory thing, which I don't want to get too much into, because will say I have personal feelings against that practice. I don't think it's very practical, and I don't mean no insult to anyone who considers themselves polyamory or who agrees with that philosophy. I have my own personal reasons, which I'm not going to get into, why I don't believe in that particular philosophy, and from my experience, those relationships are never work and they never last. And I do want to point out the difference between polyamory, which is the kind of ending this is, like the open marriage, which is, they meet once a year or whatever, and they have sex with different people and they're okay with that. I just don't see that working. And there is a difference in my mind between polyamory and plural relationships. Like, if anyone had read the Expanse novels, one of the novels, I think, called Babylon's Ashes, they had a relationship with a character named Micho Pa, who was in a plural marriage where there was 3 women and 3 men, and they all sort of loved each other. They didn't necessarily all have sexual relationship with each other. That kind of rotated. Like, there could have been, I believe, one of the men might have been heterosexual, so he only had sexual relationship with the women, but they all were in this partnership. They all considered themselves family. And that, I think, is actually a lot more practical when everyone's involved. This polyamory is totally different because there's a marriage, and then outside that marriage, the members of that marriage would go have sexual or romantic relationship with other people who the partner doesn't know about or will never see. And I don't know, just for human... the way human psyche has been set up, especially through modern societal norms, I don't think that's possible to maintain without getting jealousy or resentment creeping up. just my opinion. I know if you have a different opinion, maybe your personal experience was different. That's fine. That's all on you. But from my opinion, that's what really soured me to the ending of this episode, is because I don't think that ending solution was really a solution. Plus, getting back to the episodes in particular, I don't like, it felt very Game of Thrones season 8-ish to me, the way that they didn't actually show on screen him telling his wife about what's happening. I think that's something we needed to see on screen. I felt robbed of that moment. I know they played it off as a plot device so they could jump instead of having, because you know how she's going to react. There's going to be resentment, she's going to be angry, but they skipped through all that and went straight towards, oh, this is the solution. They're going off and they have their anniversary where he gets to go off and do his video game thing, and she gets to go off and meet guys at bars, which actually, as I said, I didn't like that, and I didn't like that they actually skipped over what was the most important part of the story, in my opinion, was him actually coming clean to his wife and to actually see how she reacts rather than just assuming, oh, this is, and it eventually led to this solution, which in my opinion will never work. But so that did kind of annoy me. Also, of course, there's some practical issues I have with the whole video game thing, because if the video game is created for fighting and they actually feel the pain when they're fighting, who would want to do that? Part of the fun of playing a Street Fighter type thing is that you're just sitting with the controls or whatever. If you actually feels like someone's punching you, I think that takes away a lot of the fun. I don't know, my opinion. Maybe some people actually would prefer to get in fights like that. But it seems like they should have, if they're going to meet in a game to have sex and not even, like, the fighting eventually just becomes a pretense. Like, they don't even play the fighting game anymore. Seems like there would be a specific game more geared towards that. I don't know. I just think they would have some safeguards and put in this game that they would actually have to do what the game was constructed for, was fighting, not having sex with each other. And it seems like they would sort of have restrictions or ways to prevent them from doing that, and there would be another game, whatever, that's more specifically about doing that. And also, like, I don't know, I felt it kind of weird that they used the exact same avatars every single time. And especially because this was a fling, the way it was portrayed, as I said, was kind of like a fling, something new and exciting. It seems like they'd want to switch things up and play different characters every time. Like, even when the guys started talking about, oh, what's it like having sex as a woman, and the other guy's like, oh, it's so different. That really made me think, like, the next time they showed him having sex, I actually thought that they switched and that Anthony Mackie's character was playing the woman this time, but that actually wasn't the case. Well, but, whatever. I mean, I just think that would make a lot more sense. I think they just wanted to keep things simple for the point of the episode, but it didn't really strike me as that realistic. Anyway, yeah, I really didn't enjoy talking about that. But anyway, so that's my feelings on Striking Vipers. So my rating for Striking Vipers out of 10 is a 6 good. It was a interesting episode. As I said, it explored how technology affects human relationships, and that's what Black Mirror is all about. And I think for the most part, with a few exceptions, they did a good job of explaining how two heterosexual men could end up in a sexual relationship through this technology, because it's something different that changes and affects relationships, and also how the guy's wife would cope with this new type of situation. But I think they could have showed that, explored that more. As I said, they shouldn't have cut it off when he was telling her about the relationship. I would have liked to see how she reacts through the video, particularly because of the video game aspect of it, how that would affect her reaction or her behavior or going forward. Just showing us this end result through having an open marriage, which, I'm sorry, call it my personal bias, whatever, I just don't buy. So it's an interesting episode. It's an interesting concept. Could have been better, in my opinion. and it didn't really do enough to be considered like a great Black Mirror episode, but it's certainly not a bad one. So that's why I give it a 6 out of 10. Anyway, that is it for my review of Black Mirror Season 5, Episode 1, Striking Vipers. Now, the other thing that's interesting to note is, even though this is considered Episode 1 by Netflix and by IMDb, it has it listed as Episode 1, I actually watched this episode last. For whatever reason, when I clicked on Black Mirror, I think it was an advertisement for Smithereens. So I clicked on that, it took me directly to the Smithereens episode. I watched that first, and then I watched the Rachel, Jack, and Ashley 2 episodes second, and then it did this episode last. So I was assuming this was episode 3, but when I looked it up, apparently it's episode 1, even though it was the last episode I watched. But whatever, it doesn't really matter what episode you watched it in. It's Black Mirror, and I think that was kind of the point. You can watch them in any order you like. But for the sake of clarity, I did this one first, so next week I will be back with what is technically episode 2 of season 5, Smithereens, in about 3 or 4 days, and then 3 or 4 days after that I'll also give my review for Rachel, Jack, and Ashley 2. So be sure to check that out. Also check out my channel, as I do videos of many other shows like Star Trek, Lost, The Expanse, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all that. And thanks a lot for watching.